Get a cup, get a cup, get a cup. Hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone, to another video of Fresh Just Slim. And today we're looking at another scary video by Nick Crowley. It has been a hot minute since I've seen a Nick Crowley video. Quite a while, it feels like. And today we're looking at the internet's darkest corners 6 by Nick Crowley. I'm definitely doing these out of order because I don't think I've reacted to any of the others. I think I might have done one. But we're looking at 6. With that being said, the original link's in the description. Make sure you go subscribe to Nick if you're new, subscribe as well. Without any further ado, let's begin.
Fifth alarm. Working structure fire. 7741 Liberty Road Drive.
It's 9 a.m. on May 18th, 2024.
This is friggin' recent.
Residents of Charlotte, North Carolina wake up to the smell and sight of black smoke billowing up into the sky. The source: a massive 7-story apartment complex.
I think it's just called smoke.
Home to 239 luxury units, or at least what should have been luxury units. At the time, the structure was still under construction, meaning that thankfully no residents were living there. But this in and of itself presented 2 major problems. The first was that, in its current state, the top 5 floors were primarily just the bones of the structure, made almost entirely of wooden insulation, making the building as a whole extremely flammable.
Is an apartment building they're building out of wood and insulation? Insulation isn't flammable. That pink stuff? It's fiberglass. That's not flammable. But wood, yeah. Why would you build an apartment out of wood?
Meaning that, although the fire had started out relatively small, it was quickly going to consume the entire complex if it wasn't put out quickly. Which brings us to the second and even more glaring problem. The building was actively under construction when the fire started, and that morning 17 construction workers had clocked in, all of whom were now in grave danger. And by the time the firefighters arrived on the scene,
whoa,
the situation was already dire. And so firefighters rushed in, finding a large group of the employees and leading them out to safety. Though when they made it outside, they made the horrifying realization that they had only found 15 of them.
And how many are in there? 17?
Somewhere within that labyrinth of burning wooden walls, 2 men were left behind, trapped and calling out to anyone who might hear them. And these pleas weren't just being made to those on the scene, as in the following minutes, one of the trapped men, 30-year-old DeMonte Sherrill, would take out his phone, open up Facebook, and go live, revealing the horrifying reality that both he and his friend had found themselves in.
Somebody send help, we're in South Park.
That's freaking crazy, dude.
You gotta do it now. Now or never.
Wonder how that fire even started in the first place.
Watch this, watch this, watch this.
Alright, I just finished my coffee, but I gotta go get some more, because this is gonna be a little bit longer of a video. Dude, my wrist hurts so much. I worked yesterday, because I do it part-time, I guess, or here and there. And I worked yesterday, and I don't know what the frig I did, but I sprained my wrist. The whole thing's killing me. Oh, and it's not from whatever else you might be thinking.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now. At work, the building on fire, and I can't get out.
The stream showed DeMonte Sherrill and his friend Ruben Holmes somewhere deep within the prospective apartment complex.
How many stories did they say this was? Because I feel like if it was one story, you could probably jump out the window and maybe you might break a leg or something, but at least you'll be alive.
And though the fire hadn't yet reached them, the smoke certainly had, blanketing them in a thick, impenetrable fog, not only making breathing extremely difficult, but also making it nearly impossible for rescuers to see them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's getting harder and harder for them to see us. We're gonna have to stand out here and see. The building on fire, I'm trapped inside, me and my man.
This was likely one of the reasons why DeMonte chose to start this livestream, hopeful that it could show rescuers exactly where they were.
How? You would hope it would, but at the same time, from everything that you can see that he has shown, if you're a rescuer, you are just like me, where you do not know this building and the locations of everything. What the frig is that gonna tell me?
But based on the footage, their positioning was far from ideal.
Exactly.
They were on the second highest floor, floor 6, which had
6 floors. Oh boy, yeah, they gotta get lower.
Had only one access point, a single stairway that was on the complete opposite side of the building. And based on their testimony in the footage, something had clearly blocked their path to that one remaining exit, meaning that the only other way out would be to jump. Though at 6 stories in the air and falling into what would likely be the heart of the fire, this would have meant certain death. There was quite literally nowhere for them to go. Rescue was their only hope.
That's crazy, dude.
Yo, this building is on fire. I'm at work. Somebody send help. We're at South Park.
Seemingly realizing this, DeMonte began to grow more desperate, yelling out into the void of smoke, while Ruben can be seen in the background waving his phone flashlight, with both men doing anything they could to help rescuers find them. Before...
Too much smoke inhalation, right? Like, you have like a limited time, I think, when you're breathing in smoke. And doesn't smoke rise too? So like the lower you get in the building, would there be less smoke?
The stream abruptly ends. Rescuers were aware of the unfolding situation on the 6th story. They first tried to reach the men by using a massive crane with a basket attached, which can actually be seen in DeMonte's livestream. Though in it, you can see that it's also facing the complete wrong direction, as the smoke was just that impenetrable. However, at one point, it's believed that the crane operator did actually see these men, but the blaze was just too extreme, leading to the operator himself having to be rescued. This left only one real option for saving DeMonte and Ruben. They were going to have to go in after them. And so they climbed that stairway up to floor 6 and started their trek to the opposite end of the structure.
Like, if they're on floor 6, I assume it's a full floor, right? Like, you could walk around the whole building on that floor. So why wouldn't they just walk around until they got to, like, an ideal angle where the crane could see them or something like that?
Though before they could even make it halfway, the rescuers were relegated to a slow crawl, as the inferno around them raged more and more intensely, and the smoke grew thicker and thicker. Though that's when they began to hear screaming. Somewhere, lost in that maze, Ruben and DeMonte were yelling as loud as they could for help. This sound was a sign that they were getting close, though just then, rescuers would be met with another sound.
All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure, per command. All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure.
Command all companies, this will be
They're told to leave the structure. Are they, oh my gosh, are they worried that the whole thing could collapse?
defensive at this time. We'll be ready for this side to collapse.
Oh, they are.
Everybody get out of the collapse zone. Confirming you are coming out, but you're not out of the building.
With the order being made for all of them to evacuate, as by this point, the structure was engulfed in flames, and a collapse was imminent. The firefighters tried to call out to the two in one last attempt to guide them towards rescue, but they never came. In fact, at that point, the structure fell eerily silent. They would leave that structure without DeMonte or Ruben, and minutes later, the fire consumed the entire building, with the temperature inside reaching 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
This is freaking brutal. This is 2024. They had drones then. Do they not have drones that they could, like, fly and, like, deliver a package of, say, like, a breathing mask? Or, like, how is that not a thing?
Before
it collapsed.
it would eventually topple to the ground, and inside, DeMonte and Ruben would become the sole fatalities of this catastrophe.
That's freaking tragic, dude.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now, at work, and the building on fire, and I can't get out.
Hopefully their families were, like, I'm not sure how it all works, but if this happens at work, hopefully their families are taken care of, right? I don't know if, like, insurance or something would do that.
It's getting harder and harder for them to see us.
Knowing how the story ends would make this live stream difficult for anyone to watch. But what
You see how there was a floor below them, though? I would have tried to, like, get down to that floor and then just keep trying to make your way lower. One thing I've learned is that you should really try to be self-reliant and not rely on others because you can always trust yourself. Doesn't mean you shouldn't never trust others or rely on others, but who's always around you? You are.
I find most upsetting about it is that the majority of those who initially watched this were his own friends and family.
That is so freaking sad. So then they all see this? Oh my gosh.
That followed him on Facebook, with these viewers including his own mother. And a lot of them probably had no idea he even worked this job, as he had just been hired that week. His brother had also caught the stream as it was happening and actually rushed over to the scene where he pleaded with the firefighters to watch the footage. But despite doing the best they could, there was just too much working against them to save DeMonte and Ruben. Following an investigation into the fire, it was discovered that the crew was using an organic foam insulation, which was known to be extremely flammable and
Oh, it's foam insulation. Yeah, I have no idea. Like, you know that pink stuff that's in houses? I don't think that's the flammable. But I have no idea if foam is, but they're saying it is. Why would you use flammable insulation on an apartment complex? That's like asking for some kind of disaster to happen.
and produced thick black smoke. And this became deadly when the machine used to spray that insulation caught fire, sending the whole building up in flames, where they had yet to install any sort of smoke detector or alarm system to alert the crew of a fire. Making matters worse, there had been a temporary set of stairs made right where the two men had been trapped, but that stairwell had just been removed in order to make way for the permanent set of stairs.
Oh my gosh.
Because of this and a myriad of other issues, the companies involved with this construction were forced to pay a fine of $50,000 and are currently being sued by the families of both victims. But
50 grand, that's all. For 2 lives, they had to pay 50 grand. That's not even like, that might just be a year's salary for one of them. That is actually, this is so frustrating. And they didn't give any compensation to, it doesn't sound like they gave any compensation to the families.
regardless of the outcome, nothing will ever make up for the loss of DeMonte Sherrill and Ruben Holmes.
That's crazy, dude.
Things were getting concerning. Johnny Cashman spoke to his family nearly every single day, but now, on the 6th day without receiving any communication from him, they knew that something was wrong. Johnny lived in Lynchburg, Virginia, hundreds of miles away from his home in Maine, and so, being unable to check on him themselves, they called police in the area and requested a welfare check. Police entered Johnny's apartment on the 19th of April, 2022, and hours later, they would
That apartment does not look so good.
call his parents with the news that they had found their son dead on the floor. According to the officers, Johnny
That sound effect you're using is frightening.
had experienced some sort of medical event that led to GI bleeding that ultimately claimed his life. But this
GI bleeding, if you don't know, is bleeding in your oh my gosh, I don't know the word, GI tract, which is like your, I think it's either your intestines or your stomach. Gastrointestinal intestine, gosh, I can't think of the name.
This made no sense to Johnny's family. He was only 38 years old and had just been given a clean bill of health after a full medical exam only 4 months prior. It was so out of the blue, in fact, that they even asked if there were any signs of a struggle, or if there was any evidence that he may have taken his own life. But they were assured that there was no trauma, no drugs, and nothing suspicious found on the scene, and that, as shocking as it was, his cause of death was entirely natural,
You would probably want to get a autopsy done by a professional.
and had likely just been spurred on by drinking and tobacco use, with the only solace being that Johnny didn't suffer, as they stated that he had died instantly.
I like a beer here and there, okay? Last weekend, I had one too many, not intentionally, and that was one of the worst nights I've had in a decade. I had a couple beers, I was playing like Battlefield 6, and I thought, you know, it's gonna be a few hours until I go to bed. I could have another one, right? Because it takes 1 beer per hour for it to get out of your system. So I thought, okay, I could have another one, it should be fine. That was not the case. I don't know what the frig happened, but that was one of the, but I threw up 3 times, and all I had was one more. Now these were stronger beers, they're like about 8% alcohol. I threw up 3 times. I had to clean up the floor. Absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. And why am I saying this? Oh yeah, how the frig would, I know alcohol can thin your blood, but how would that and tobacco cause instant death? Like, from GI bleeding. That does not add up. You need an autopsy by a professional because something is amiss.
Because of this, no autopsy was performed, as the case seemed as straightforward as it gets.
What?
And despite his family questioning if they should get their own autopsy,
They should.
they were told by officers that it wouldn't be necessary. And so, Johnny's body was cremated and sent back to Maine.
Cremated? To hide the evidence. Yo, this is not, nah.
In what seemed to be the end of Johnny Cashman's story.
That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
10 days after Johnny's body was discovered, his ex-girlfriend and her mother made their way back to his apartment in order to retrieve some of her belongings. She knew that re-entering the space was going to be difficult, but ultimately there was no way she could have prepared for what was waiting for her inside. There was blood everywhere. It was pooled in the bathrooms, wiped on doors, spread all over the living space, and was even found on a chair and a banister. But the most horrifying part of it all was the walls. They were covered in splattered blood.
How is this not in, like, the police report or whatever? Also, how is this not cleaned up yet?
Which revealed long streaking handprints. It was something straight out of a horror movie, and although Johnny's cause of death was deemed natural,
How could that be natural? How could that be natural? No. Also, why didn't he call someone? You just start, like, if there's handprints everywhere, he obviously had time to walk around. So why didn't he call someone? An ambulance, please. I don't know. Someone to come help. Like, he obviously had some kind of time.
What they found in that apartment seemed anything but. Traumatized by what they were witnessing, the pair snapped multiple photos of the bloodshed and ran out of the unit, directly into Johnny's neighbor. This neighbor revealed that they believed something far worse than a medical emergency had happened to Johnny, as they had a security camera mounted to their door which faced Johnny's unit, and on the day of his passing, it captured something incredibly disturbing.
Don't tell me the police came there that day, or something like that.
The footage shows Johnny making his way up the flight of stairs leading to his apartment at around 3:03 p.m.
He looks perfectly fine.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary at all, though it is noteworthy that he was holding an empty glass, perhaps insinuating that he had been drinking. But this doesn't seem to impair his movements much at all, as he punches in the code and enters his home.
Even if he did have a drink or two, it's not going to cause you to spontaneously... Like, that doesn't make sense.
Just as he did every other day. But moments later, something happens inside that unit, and while it goes unseen, it doesn't go unheard.
Oh, so it's not like we saw anyone else go. I was thinking we were going to see the cops or someone walk in behind him. And that would explain why the police seemingly tried to say, oh, it was natural causes. 1 minute after. So no one else comes up. What are you doing? So there's someone else in there. So why did this security camera not pick up... Wouldn't the security camera pick up someone else going in?
Yo, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing, man?
Clearly, this is foul play. You would be out of your mind to suggest otherwise. Like... If no one else is in there, who is he talking to? His GI tract? Like, maybe the police knew that it was foul play, but maybe they just didn't care and, like, just tried to write it off to get on with their day. Now, does anyone leave? Or is maybe they climb it, like, out a window or something?
The audio seems to depict a man yelling, asking repeatedly, "What are you doing?" and begging for something to stop. On top of this, you can also hear loud thuds and banging. Almost as if things were falling over inside, or there was some sort of physical altercation, before the unit then goes quiet just a few seconds later. It was unclear if this voice was Johnny's, or perhaps someone else who had been inside the unit, but
It has to be Johnny's, because it doesn't make sense for it to be someone else that was inside of the unit. Also, why does this security camera, like, it should have picked up anyone else who went inside of there, right? Unless they climbed in through, like, a window?
But regardless, one thing was apparent from this audio. There was someone else in that apartment, despite the fact that Johnny lived alone. And just 7 minutes later, this unseen person would emerge.
Oh, so they did come out through there.
This clearly wasn't Johnny, and after leaving the unit, the anonymous man nearly makes it out of the building before he seems to change his mind.
Wait, why does he come back?
Turning around and walking back up the stairs.
He tried to like wipe his fingerprints off it or something?
Before fiddling with the door handle, touching it only with his sleeve, like he was wiping off his fingerprints.
Perfectly natural causes. That's crazy. That's like a hit or something.
He then walks down the stairs and stops once again, where he seems to be in a state of shock over whatever had just transpired, before he composes himself and walks out of the building. But the footage wasn't quite finished yet.
What? 8 minutes after, he comes back?
Just 1 minute later, you can hear Johnny shouting for help from inside the apartment.
Oh, he's still alive.
To which moments after, he stops, and no further sound or activity would come from Johnny's unit until police arrived 5 days later. The footage and the scene at the apartment seemed to contradict what Johnny's family had been told about his death.
If this took place and they have the security footage of this, how many days was it just sitting there before they found it? Like the people lived in this apartment found that, you know? Was it after the police had come and then took out the body and all that? Because in that case, like why is there no footage of that guy arriving? Like the guy who did this was wearing that black jacket. Why was there no footage of him walking up in the first place? And why didn't they show this to the police?
The blood all over made it obvious that Johnny's death had not happened in an instant. And this, coupled by the presence of this unknown man who was clearly distraught and wiping off his fingerprints, as well as the sound of the apparent struggle inside, seemed to point towards something much more sinister than what was initially conveyed to the family. But even with this footage, police still believed that Johnny's death was due to a medical emergency, as they quickly changed their initial story, saying that the blood spread was due to uncontrollable vomiting, and that Johnny had in fact likely suffered, at least for a short while. But this medical emergency wasn't elaborated on, as they didn't truly know what caused it, as no autopsy was ever performed.
Yeah, because they rushed to burn the body.
Nor could one ever be performed, as by this point, Johnny was already cremated, and cremated because of the officer's initial statements. So if Johnny had actually been murdered, which the footage does seem to suggest, there was now virtually no way to prove it. And what makes this even more frustrating is that law enforcement already had this footage. It was—
They did! They did! I'm like a loss for words. Some people here need to lose their job.
was collected that very day, and they either didn't fully look through it or didn't think that this was overly suspicious. But everyone else—
How? How could you be a police officer and think this is not suspicious?
Surely did. And soon, this video began making the rounds online, leading to one glaring question being asked. Who is this man? As no one in Johnny's life recognized him. Well, it wouldn't be until May 11th that investigators would finally ID him as Stephen Church, and upon being questioned, he revealed that he had moved to Lynchburg for work, but the opportunity he had lined up fell through shortly after he arrived, leaving him with no money and without a place to stay, which is when he met Johnny, who offered to let him crash on his couch. He supposedly stayed with Johnny.
See, if it was an accident, or if he did just all of a sudden have this medical emergency, why did this dude not call the cops, not call an emergency service? Why did he just leave his friend there to, you know, bleh? There's a lot of points on the graph making a line.
For 3 days, and described Johnny as an alcoholic who drank constantly, including on that fateful day. When Johnny arrived home, Stephen claims that he started drunkenly yelling at him about paying rent, which led to the two getting into a verbal altercation. But he insisted that this altercation never turned physical, and that he left immediately after.
Now, you can hear Johnny yelling in this, so clearly you can hear things through this door. So wouldn't them yelling about rent also be in this footage?
To which he quickly went back to clean his prints because he was afraid that Johnny would try and have him arrested for squatting. And having already racked up 2 felonies in his life, Stephen was paranoid about going back to jail.
That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. You're gonna wipe the prints on the door, okay? But if you're living there, your prints are everywhere inside. So that doesn't make any sense why you would just wipe the prints on the door.
But when Stephen was leaving, he did mention seeing Johnny hunched over the toilet as if he were going to vomit. But he claims to have left before this so-called medical emergency started. This is the gist of Stephen's account from that day.
See, maybe what happened is that there is some truth here. Because you said 8 minutes later the guy was yelling for help. I don't know. Things just don't make any sense here. But like 8 minutes later, like maybe something did happen after he left and then he was asking for help. But then why in the footage was he yelling, dude, stop or whatever, and you could hear like things rattling around. Things just aren't adding up. Things aren't adding up.
But the problem is, it doesn't really match up with what we're hearing in the video.
Yeah, that's not the sound of a nice, calm conversation around a disagreement.
Yo, what the fuck, dude?
From the footage, we can hear everything going on in that unit, but at no point do we hear any sort of an argument, nor do we hear anything about rent, with the phrases lending themselves more to a physical struggle rather than a verbal one. In fact, the whole time it appears that we're only hearing one voice. But there is an exception.
That's true.
To my knowledge, it's never been conclusively determined whose voice is who in the recording, and either scenario paints a far different picture of what may have happened inside that room.
This is actually very true. But if that voice of the guy freaking out is actually this guy here, or the guy who was still alive, like wearing that black coat, if that was his voice, then it's like, is he seeing Johnny spurting blood everywhere? And that's how he's reacting to it? Or is it Johnny freaking out at this guy in the black coat and for whatever that guy's doing, right? These are two completely different situations. But either way, if it was the guy in the black coat who is seeing Johnny shoot blood everywhere, how could you not call an ambulance or emergency service if you see that's what's happening to your friend? That doesn't make sense either.
But regardless, this audio makes it clear that Stephen's story was fabricated at least to some degree, as he also fails to account for the loud banging in the background. And because of this, his version of events is generally rejected, with most people seeming to believe one of two main theories.
Couldn't he be arrested just on that alone? Isn't that called perjury? Like, if you're saying that to a police officer?
The first is that, upon arriving home, Johnny and Stephen had gotten into a physical altercation, resulting in Johnny taking some sort of blow to his abdomen, which in turn triggered or exacerbated this medical emergency. GI bleeds are horrific, and can certainly cause the level of bleeding that was found in the apartment, and perhaps seeing all the blood coming from Johnny, Stephen started yelling at him, before deciding to run off, fearing that he would be charged for murder. This would explain Stephen's demeanor and actions after leaving the apartment, and why he may have fabricated his story, as he knew or knows that he was directly responsible for Johnny's death. And this blow to the abdomen could have easily been missed by investigators, as the injuries would have been primarily internal.
Like, how freaking... I can look this up. How severe are GI bleeds? Because from what I was thinking it wasn't that severe. Alright, I'm gonna have to censor some of the pictures here. Frig. Oh man, there's too many big words and crap here.
The second theory is that upon arriving home, Johnny naturally experienced a medical emergency, leading to this catastrophic GI bleed. Upon seeing this, and perhaps being in a state of shock, Stephen yelled at him, demanding to know what was happening and telling him to stop, as perhaps he was moving around the apartment and tracking blood everywhere, which would explain the other voice saying, "I can't stop."
That also might be true. Like, maybe this guy is innocent. It sure as heck does not look great for him. But why didn't he call the police? If you know you didn't do anything wrong, like if you know you didn't stab this guy or friggin' shoot him, then you know that there's no evidence to prove that you caused that. So why would you not call an emergency service and instead wipe your fingers and run?
I could see how this experience would make no sense to Stephen, and perhaps just having no idea what was happening, he left and tried to make it look like he was never there.
But if you saw your friend bleeding all over the floor, you'd probably be like, oh, this isn't normal. I should call an ambulance.
As he was afraid of being blamed for whatever was happening to Johnny.
Yeah, so it's definitely better, instead of him calling an ambulance or something, it definitely looks better where he walks out the door and wipes his fingerprints. That was definitely the smarter option to take.
And so he essentially left Johnny there to die, whether knowingly or unknowingly. What bothers me about this theory is why 911 was never called.
Exactly.
Not only by Steven, but by Johnny too, as his phone was found in the unit with blood on it.
Exactly.
Implying that he had it in his hand at some point, though it's possible that the massive blood loss just made him too disoriented. Both of these theories seem believable, or at least more so than the explanation that Steven had given. However, in October of 2022, Johnny's case would officially be closed for good, with Steven being cleared of any wrongdoing, as Johnny's death was labeled the same way that it always has been, a medical emergency that couldn't be further elaborated on, with the most relevant evidence being that Steven's shoe prints were not found in the blood, but Johnny's were, implying that he had not been part of the struggle.
I guess that's good, or evidence to prove he was somewhat innocent, but if he had done something to him to cause the bleeding, it's like if you shoot someone, they're going to start bleeding everywhere. You don't have to go any further to do anything. You're done, right? If you're trying to take them out, you can just walk away, and your footprints are not going to be all in their blood.
But in my mind, this can be explained by both theories mentioned previously. Though regardless, without the possibility of an autopsy, this is likely where this case ends for good. But with this disturbing footage, I can't help but think that there was more to the story than we may ever know.
100%. But, yeah, there's not enough evidence, I guess, to prove that whatever the other guy's name is 100% did it. Because the cops jumped the gun, and then they burned the body. Which is I think that's just like the craziest thing. Way too suspicious. I don't know. But that I figure is like the biggest mess up over anything else. I also don't understand why neither of them called the ambulance or the cops or anyone.
It was around 7:30 a.m. on a warm July morning back in 2019. 17-year-olds Bethany Martin and a 16-year-old friend decide to walk to a gas station near their home in San Antonio, Texas. And as the two of them made their way down the road, their path brought them parallel to a drainage ditch, which was often filled with various trash and other discarded material. But on this day, something far more interesting caught their eye. It looked like a man crouching down and leaned up against one of the concrete walls, but the closer they got, the more they realized how unusual his posture was. He looked completely unnatural.
Like a friggin' Fent zombie or whatever they're called?
And he wasn't moving. And by the time they came face to face with him, the reality of the situation would hit them. They had just found a dead body. This discovery was enough to traumatize anyone, especially two teenagers, and upon calling the police and being sent on their way, Bethany and her friend would make the long walk back home contemplating what to do next, before they eventually landed on the idea of sharing their experience with the world. And so,
that would definitely be traumatizing. Like, I would not wish that on anyone.
as soon as they got in the door, they began to set up lights and their camera in order to film a TikTok.
Don't tell me they're gonna start dancing trying to explain that they found some dead body. I just found a dead body. No way they're gonna do something like that. That is... nah. I was thinking about putting some kind of music behind me dancing, but I'm like, that might be a bit much. So I'll leave that to any of you who want to make YouTube poofs, so you can do that. That seems a bit disrespectful, doesn't it? Everyone deals with trauma differently. I make TikToks. So it's not even setting up one camera. You set up like 3 of them, or you move the camera 3 different times to get this. I am like flabbergasted. This is almost as bad as that person who's like dancing beside their dying grandma.
The clip showed the two sitting on a couch appearing to be in a state of shock, with the words, "Us remembering we found a dead body this morning," plastered on the screen, offering no other context aside from the description, which simply read, "I wish we were kidding. All respect to the family."
I don't know, man. Like, how are you gonna say they're in shock? I get it. But at the same time, why would you set up like 4 different camera positions? I don't know. That just seems like in bad taste.
Some offered sympathy for the girls, while others viewed their post as insensitive and exploitative. But others weren't even convinced it was real, partially due to this glaring lack of context. But any doubt of this post's legitimacy would be quickly thwarted by a discovery made not even 1 full day later, as it was revealed that this recording hadn't actually been the only video that these two girls had made on that fateful day.
Don't tell me that they ended up doing, like, I don't know, I'm just speculating. Did they end up, like, someone and then making the video? Like, I'm just speculating, I have no idea, but that would be wild if that was the case.
On their walk to the gas station, the girls had stumbled across the body of 25-year-old Marcus Adams.
So they didn't, like, do anything to him, though, right? They just stumbled across the body?
The young man having seemingly perished earlier that morning, with it being apparent that he had taken his own life.
Oh, okay. So they're innocent. Good. When you're saying that they were making more videos, it's like, did they make a video talking about how they're going to do something horrible?
But upon finding Marcus, the girls weren't actually overwhelmed with sadness or even shock.
Oh, they're content brained.
As instead, their focus immediately went to something far different, as something on the man's body had caught their attention. His necklace. The girls really liked
No, they stole his necklace.
it. In fact, the unnamed 16-year-old had said that it matched her fashion perfectly. And so, before police arrived, the two would once again pull out their phone and start recording, showing Bethany approaching the body with her intention being to grab his necklace. Which she eventually does, removing the medallion and giving it to her friend, before tossing the chain into the grass nearby, leading to the girls running away from the scene. The 16-year-old would then post that video onto her Snapchat story.
They are definitely not recovering from shock here. They are content brained. That is so disrespectful. At least they didn't take him out. Like, I was thinking when you were suggesting that they made other videos in the morning, that maybe they had some weird plot of trying to take someone out and then using that person as like clout or something like that. That does not seem like that's the case, which is good. But this is also not really that good, that they're just stealing stuff off this guy. Why don't you take a picture of the necklace and go buy it yourself?
For all of her close friends to see. I can't show the footage for obvious reasons, but it's truly awful. And just based on the audio alone, you can tell that they're very obviously having fun doing this.
You gotta do it now. Now or never. Here, hold me. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god.
Is this a crime? Like, is anything they're doing here a crime? Because they have no remorse in anything. Like, this just seems so... This is... Kids these days are so freaking screwed.
There's something so uniquely disturbing about it. It's clear that upon finding the body, there was no real emotional impact on them.
That's shocking for one. Two, stealing something off the body is also, like, wild. I understand in certain desperate situations you would have to do something like that in order to survive or whatever. That is not this case. So that's another shocking thing. Another shocking thing is then filming TikTok with, like, multiple different angles for, like, clout.
At least none that outweighed their desire to steal from it. And as if stealing from this man who had just taken his own life and posting it for all their friends to see as if it were a joke wasn't horrible enough, they then immediately posted this other video to TikTok in an attempt to garner sympathy. It's truly awful, and made even more appalling by reports that claim that the 16-year-old had actually worn this medallion in the TikTok video and in others made following its posting. And unfortunately, their actions had even more upsetting consequences.
How does this get worse?
As the footage from their Snapchat story was quickly downloaded by someone they knew and posted onto an app called Nextdoor, with the footage being totally uncensored. And it was on this app where it's claimed that many of Marcus Adams' own family members would see the footage, many of whom weren't even aware that he was deceased.
What?
Just one day after posting this TikTok, both girls were questioned by the police after the incident and the footage was reported to them. And as a result, Bethany would be charged with theft of a human corpse.
Oh, that is a crime. I didn't know that. There goes my weekend plans. I'm joking. I am joking.
But would ultimately avoid any serious jail time. Meanwhile, the 16-year-old's name and charges were never publicly released, but we do know that the medallion was returned to the family.
That's good.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, Bethany would later come back to her TikTok page shortly after her arrest and share her side of the story, where she gave a less than half-hearted apology, while also claiming to be the victim, saying that her friend had pressured her to steal from Marcus, as well as pressured her into making that TikTok in the first place, because she thought it would be a hit.
Yeah, you weren't sorry until you got caught. Facts. This is so true. You know, when people are apologizing when they get caught, you know, they don't actually mean it. I love the fact that they're also trying to, like, I'm the victim here. I'm the victim here. I mean, there may have been pure pressure from your friend to do this or that, but ultimately you are still your own person. And this is also a very serious thing, and you clearly should have had the wherewithal, you know, and awareness to be like, okay, yeah, maybe we shouldn't film this TikTok, or maybe we shouldn't touch this, you know, individual and take their crap. Like, it's not a one-sided issue. You know, in order for this to have happened, you had to agree, which means you are at least 50% responsible.
Though obviously this didn't go over well.
There was another comment there that said psychotic behavior. I would also agree with that. Finding a dead person, shocking. For sure, I understand, especially if you're younger, I'd understand how you might be in shock or something like that. To then take something off of the body, super disrespectful. Also a crime. And then film a TikTok of it from multiple camera angles, showing that you're moving camera angles, or, you know, you're moving the camera around it to get, like, the best cinematography or whatever. Unbelievable. It's like those people who set up, you'll see this on TikTok or whatever now and then, where they'll be like, I saw the one yesterday where some lady's like trying to cope with my grief from a breakup. And she obviously set the camera up to make it look good, and then was like, bah! Or whatever. Clearly you're not that suffering from it. You're more suffering from lack of clout. You know, if you have the wherewithal to set up the camera angles to get the best shot for your video, that seems like it's probably more of your priority. At least to me. But anyway, hope you guys like this absolutely wild video. I'm going to end it here. Make sure you guys go subscribe to Nick Crowley. This is a long video, dude. But yeah, I think I'd rate this out of a 10. Traumatizing. But with that being said, I'll see you guys next time.